Hi, I'm Mike Brofman, and I'm joined here by Mike Djupstrom, and this is Song and Wine Season 2. We are back, but you might notice we are not in the apartment in New York. We're actually in Philadelphia in honor of Brooklyn Art Song Society's Philadelphia debut, which we're going to talk about tonight. I'm with Mike because we are the four-hand duo for Brahms' Liebeslieder Opus 52 and Neue Liebeslieder Opus 65, which are for piano four-hand and four singers, soprano, alto, tenor, and bass. So we're going to talk a little bit about Brahms, so thanks for being on the show.
No problem.
And cheers.
Cheers.
So, we're doing an all Brahms concert. I think the reason why we're doing all Brahms is Brooklyn Art Song Society's festival in the fall. Last year we did Schubert the last year. It was all the works, songs, and otherwise from Schubert's last year. This festival is called Clara, Robert, and Johannes, and it's basically the love triangle between Clara, Robert Schumann, and Johannes Brahms. That's some of it's legend, but it kind of is a nice story. Basically, Clara Schumann and Robert Schumann were married very young, sort of against, they ran away against their parents' wishes, and they were sort of this sort of feverishly intense love affair, and they befriended a young Johannes Brahms and sort of supported Brahms when he was young in his career. Then eventually Schumann had his sort of mental breakdown and ended up being committed and died, and Clara was widowed, and Brahms and Clara formed this very sort of intense relationship that was always platonic, but there was sort of a sense like Brahms sort of helped take care of the kids, and there was always a sense that Brahms really was in love with Clara, and Clara was a deep friend, but maybe not necessarily in love, and there was that tension. Brahms was sort of a lifelong bachelor. So that's the context for these 5 concerts where we're doing all the works of Clara Schumann, Robert Schumann, and Johannes Brahms. And the first one is Brahms, like I said. So in our discussion of Brahms, I wanted to discuss with you what's your favorite thing about Brahms? What makes you love Brahms, like we all do?
It's very specific, but in his piano writing, but his orchestral writing too, there are lots and lots of parallel intervals, especially thirds and sixths, which sit well, and it feels good to do that, and it creates like a characteristically lush kind of sound.
Yeah, that's the Brahms sound.
That's the Brahms sound.
It's just, it's basically, it's just like an octave with a third in it, or an octave with a sixth in it.
In the awkward version.
Yeah.
With the octave. Yeah.
And it's just, there's something about that. Well, all of Brahms, what I find about his style is it's lush and it's rich, but it's somehow like very orderly too. It's like there's no other composer who writes as thick chords as Brahms does and is so in control of the voice leading of like every note.
I think it's because, like you said, it's about voice leading. It's very contrapuntally conceived. The way that the harmonies progress one to the other isn't a sort of textbook harmonic sequence at all.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like if a Schumann, take for example, often he just writes a chord, he'll like be leading with the top note, just filling out the chords. And lesser composers, when they write Brahmsian style, that's sort of what they're doing to imitate it. But Brahms really, even though there's lots of notes, he has a kind of like Mozartian sense of balance, and every note is necessary. And I think that combined with his sort of lush, rich style
Creates the Brahms.
Is what the Brahms is, because he's such a. I feel like he's a really form-related composer in a lot of ways. That he's very interested in structure. More so than a lot of the other
romantics. I think he's pretty classical in lots of ways. Yeah, absolutely.
But and I think there's another. I feel like Brahms' style, just from an emotional level rather than like a technical level, he gets so like perilously close to sentimentalism, and he gets like right in that sweet spot of like being sentimental, where it's like really awesome, but he doesn't like. And I think a lot of because he has that kind of self-restraint, and a lot of the songs, I know because, we're playing a lot of the songs, the poetry he uses is a little sentimental.
Sentimental?
Yeah, they're like, there's lots of single teardrops. Lots of single teardrops, and there's lots of, like, full moons that remind people of lovers and stuff like that. But he does, so he's like playing with that, like really close, that sort of like, pulling on your heartstrings.
7 hearts on the sleeve.
Yeah.
Kind of, yeah.
But then his restraint comes in. So he is that weird, I think that's a good way of summarizing Brahms, this weird combination of restraint and lushness.
Yeah.
That's really effective.
Can you imagine if you were in love with your friend's wife?
Yeah, exactly.
For instance.
That's probably where it
Yeah.
comes from. That's a very, very good point. So, Mike, for those of you who don't know, Mike Djupstrom is, as well as a fabulous pianist, a fabulous composer. And so I'm wondering if any elements of Brahms have ever snuck into your composition. I know your style of music, is very lush, and romantic might be a word for it.
I mean, like you said, I've played the piano for, I guess, almost exactly as much time as I've been composing. So that the textures that I'm used to playing on the piano, a lot of which are Brahmsian textures, have certainly influenced the way I write. You mentioned before you were thinking Brahms is really into like clear classical formal structures. It's a little specific, but I remember one very peculiar instance when I learned something through a Brahms piece in a composition lesson. Maybe it's a long story, but bear with me. I was, I don't even know the year, at some point in my graduate study, I was a student at the University of Michigan, and I was studying with composer Bright Cheng, and I was working on some art songs of my own, and we had talked about the structure of the poem and trying to find the moment that was the climactic emotional experience in that poem. And we found it in the one that I was working on, and I came back and I had composed the section with, it was for mezzo-soprano, sitting up on the top of her tessitura, and it was big, sort of heroic piano gestures, and he said, oh, that's very beautiful, but do you really think is that really what the feeling of that line is about? And I said something along the lines of, well, that's the climax of the poem. He said, but the climax of the poem and the climax of music doesn't have to be the biggest moment. And I said, oh, really? I never thought about that. And so he said, actually, yeah, do you know the Brahms, well, you know it for sure, but
Yeah.
Bright said to me, do you know the Brahms Opus 118? There's a famous intermezzo. I think it's number 2 in the set, in A major. And it's sort of like it's like you said, a sentimental war horse. It's like anytime you need something beautiful, you can bring it on, everyone is like guaranteed to love it.
Yeah.
And it's got, the structure isn't that complicated, but there's basically like an A theme, there's a B section which is in the minor mode, and it's a little bit more like tugging at your heart, and there's a beautiful moment towards the end of the B section when,
Chorale.
yeah, when after the chorale, there's a spot when the melody of that B section gets tossed between the hands, or rather between the right hand top voice and a kind of inner voice that you play with both thumbs. And there's like the glorious moment at the top when everything comes down in those Brahmsian parallel sixths and their hearts melt. And Bright said, that's not the climax. And I said, but that's the moment when it hits you. He said, oh, that's because the pianist isn't playing it correctly. The climax is actually here. And you look back in the middle of that B section, there's like a very short section, maybe only 2 phrases of 8 bars or something, in F sharp major, a key which is, technically speaking, quite far from the home key of the movement. And Bright said, this is marked pianissimo. Nothing else in that whole piece is pianissimo. This is an F sharp major, which is a very strange special key. And it's the only point in the piece when all of the 8th note motion stops. And all you have are these, it's a canon, like you said also, like overlapping voices of this sort of hypnotic, static, beautiful chorale feel. And it turns out, and he showed me, of course, Brahms knew what he was doing, that the melody that he's working with in the chorale is the same melody that kind of pours out over the top at the later, like, for lack of, to repeat the word, but pouring out of the emotion. But that the real emotional core is that moment, the sort of most intimate, most inward, reserved moment in F sharp major.
Yeah.
And Bright said, that's the key to this whole piece, and if you play it, or when you play it, you need to point that out to the audiences. And I thought to myself, oh my goodness, because that really like just shattered my concept of what a climax was in music.
And I think that's why Brahms is such a great art song composer, because he was, in his essence, about sort of like the most intimate, quiet moments. More, he was fantastically disinterested in bombast, and sort of, he hated lists, and he hated all those, and Tchaikovsky, all those like big sort of grandiose composers. He was much more interested in sort of
There are a lot of songs in the sets that we're playing that never, I haven't studied them that carefully to know, but I'd say they don't rise above mezzo piano.
Yeah.
The whole sentiment is kind of like hushed and just pulsating within that.
Which leads us to very nicely to our third question. The Liebeslieder. We have spent a lot of time with these Liebeslieder. They're great. For those of you who don't know it, you should definitely come to the concert. They're fantastic pieces. They're 2 books. The first one's 18, the other one's 15. Small little pieces for a lot of people, for 6 people, and they're just waltzes. They're sort of, Brahms is known as sort of very serious symphony quartet,
hefty stuff.
But this is really Brahms being a little lighter, being a little more playful, and I think there's the playful side of Brahms. A lot of the songs are kind of irreverent and playful, and this has a lot of them. They're all about love, and they're kind of, some of them are coy but so what is your favorite part of this work?
I can't say this is a specific part in the music, but my favorite aspect of the pieces, for sure, is the way that he gets so many different colors out of what could, in the hands of a lesser composer, could be kind of like a blob of sound.
Yeah.
So you have 4 singers in all tessitura. That's filling up a lot of sound, and you have 2 pianists at one instrument making a lot of noise. But he uses the voices. There are solos. There are plenty of songs when only one person sings, or when one person has, like the tenor has the main line, and only later will the singers come in. And the piano writing is, despite the fact that we can play more than 20 notes at once, often very, very, very like thin and gossamer is maybe a better word.
Yeah.
It's the way he utilizes the instruments is really, really, the instrument and their instruments is really, really varied, and it's remarkable how much he can get.
Considering that everything is in 3.
Well, considering that everything is a waltz.
Yeah. So, and there's like some landlers instead of waltzes, but there's
True.
Yeah, it's sort of a study almost in just like how you can take one sort of very particular type of music and just find every conceivable possibility for it.
It sounds a little funny, but it hadn't actually occurred to me that they were all in 3 until you just said it.
That's something. I guess that's to its merit that you're not acutely aware of the sameness. You become acutely aware of the difference, and it's sort of like people kind of say that this is sort of Brahms tossing off a piece a little bit. It's like it was the piece that was most meant for like popular
domestic consumption.
It was a hit.
Yeah. It was a hit. Well, isn't that why the second book was written?
Yeah, it was basically his publishers like, we want more of those. It
sold so well.
Yeah, exactly. So, but considering that, they're so well structured. Like the logic of, and actually I realized if you look at both of the books, like it's like the order of the first one's for all 4, and then there's like the second one has sort of similarities, and then there's third and a fourth one that are like trading off, like one's a duet for tenor and bass, and like there's like structural, really nice structural.
Well, there's no disputing the quality of the music, whether it's for domestic consumption or not.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And there is the other thing I really like about it, getting back to sort of where we began with Brahms' sort of weird style. That's a combination of sort of restraint and excess. It's so harmonically lush, but it has this lightness to it, and that's a very Viennese kind of thing. It reminds me of like a little like chocolate bonbon that's just like so strong, but it's a little thing you like throw in your mouth, and it's like it's this weird combination of like really rich and like really light,
and it makes you say, "Give me 15 more, please."
Yeah, and then you feel gross. Speaking of which, this is a good plug for if you come to our concerts. There will be a Brahms cupcake made by Melissa Zimmerman's It's a Cuppy, which is a brand of cupcakes based in Brooklyn, where they have a cupcake and then they put like a cookie in the middle of it, and they're awesome. And you will be the first to try for free if you come to these concerts the Brahmsberry cupcake, which is a vanilla cupcake with.
Do you want to give it away?
Yeah, I think we can give it away.
Okay.
I think it's better because people are like, I don't know, like cupcakes. There's like, I don't know what's in that cupcake.
Okay, you're right. This is a special cupcake.
All right, so it's strawberry. It's like a vanilla cupcake with strawberries in it, like real strawberries, and then inside that is like a chocolate chip cookie, as in chocolate chip, as in not, I didn't stutter. And then it's like chocolate fudge on top, and it's super good. I tried one. You should definitely, and it's...
So you'll be the second to
yeah,
try it.
But I had the prototype. It'll be a little refined for
the audience.
So this is so I think I'm almost out of wine, so this is a good place for us to stop our conversation. But do come if you're in Philadelphia. We will be Thursday, September 19th at 8 p.m. at the First Unitarian Church on Chestnut Street. Then the next day in Brooklyn, 8 p.m. September 20th, Friday, we will be at the Lafayette Avenue Presbyterian Church in Fort Greene, Brooklyn. You should definitely come to one or both of those concerts. We'll be there. We'll be on piano, me, Mike Brofman, and Mike Djupstrom. Christina Bachrach is soprano. Jennifer Beatty is mezzo. Brendan Snook is tenor. And Paul Ahn is bass. So, on behalf of Brooklyn Art Song Society and Song and Wine, thanks for watching. Check us out, www.brooklynartsongsociety.org. Follow us on Twitter, @BrooklynArtSong. You can buy tickets at brownpapertickets.com. And till there's more song and more wine, see you next time. Cheers.
Cheers.